There's no better way that we could start our show. This is not a show, this is church. This is how God has guided me to spiritually feed you. That we're all not together in a brick and mortar building. We are gathered and assembled in real and authentic worship of our glorious God. So, again, I thank all of you for being a part of this. And we have a great guest on the show this evening. It's a good friend of mine. I was on his show recently, and we got a tremendous amount of positive feedback from me being on his show. And I asked him to come on here. And I thank you, Devin. We're having a professional wrestler, professional promoter. This guy's done it all and is doing a lot of great things. Good friend of mine, Devin Hannibal Nicholson. Let me read his bio before we bring him in, Des. Devin does have quite a background, to say the least. He is a professional wrestler and promoter in Canada. His promotion is called Great North Wrestling. He's a former IWA Puerto Rico Intercontinental champion and two-time WWC Puerto Rico Tag Team Champion with Black Pain. He's also had matches for WWE Impact Wrestling and has wrestled internationally as a pro. Devin is a former national champion in freestyle wrestling and Canadian Olympic qualification trial silver medalist in Greco-Roman wrestling. He has won the Canadian Open and Ontario Championships in grappling, which is submission wrestling. He won a gold medal at the 2001 Junior National Championships in London, Ontario. A month later, he gained a spot on the Canadian Junior National Team after winning the National Team Trials in Vancouver, British Columbia. Nicholson also won the OFSAA Wrestling High School Championships in 2000 and in 2001 without a single point being scored against him. He was named Amateur Wrestler of the Year by the City of Ottawa in 2001. He's a three-time Canadian champion in pro wrestling and is 3-0 in kickboxing. Devin also has a very successful media endeavor that he's currently engaged in, the Hannibal TV, which I've been on his show several times. And the Hannibal TV is the most viewed pro wrestling YouTube channel based in Canada with 150 million video views and counting. That also includes MMA, boxing, UFO, paranormal, and celebrity interviews, along with combat sports news updates as well. The Hannibal TV show airs Fridays at 6 p.m. on Zingo TV, channel 250 in Canada, and it can be viewed internationally on the Zingo TV app. The 2012 mini documentary about Devin called This is Hannibal won 3 awards at the LA Movie Awards Festival that year. He's had other Canadian TV documentaries made about him that aired on national networks as well. And if that's not enough, Devin is an avid researcher in UFOs and the paranormal as well. So without further ado, let's bring in my good buddy, Devin Hannibal Nicholson, to the show.
Yes,
Devin,
and I'm
so
also
much.
now the Texas heavyweight champion.
Well, see, you got so much going on. I left that out as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he's the Texas heavyweight champion, the current reigning undefeated Texas heavyweight champion.
Since last March, so it's almost been a year that my Blood Hunter character has held this title, so I'm very proud of that. And the other thing I'll correct you on, because that's probably your notes on me for the last show, we're actually over 200 million video views.
Wow,
on the Hannibal TV now.
That's fantastic.
And it's so many that the TV, I had to end the real TV show on Zingo TV. That doesn't exist anymore. I'm just focusing on my own channel, the Hannibal TV. We just crossed 310,000 subscribers.
Fantastic.
And we're doing great.
Congratulations.
Like you, I think you've been a guest 3 or 4 times now.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. Always enjoy coming on with you. And the last one, for some reason, we got better response than any of the other ones. And it was really great. Always enjoy it. I'm so glad that you had time to join us tonight.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. I need some purity in my life with all the characters I deal with in my profession.
Well, I certainly hope that you got something out of our opening. And usually we play a few more songs, but I didn't want you to wait too long. But for me, I have to always give praise and thanks and glory to God before anything because He's first in my life and He's first in all things. So I hope and pray, Devin, that you got something good out of that.
Well, the music was good.
Fantastic. That's
So there we
wonderful.
go.
And let me ask you, I guess before we go to the current, we should back up and start from the beginning. When you were a young guy, a child, and how old were you when you first started watching professional wrestling?
It pretty much started the moment I was able to communicate because my mother babysat a child who was 3 or 4 years older than me.
Hmm.
So he was like naturally my best friend since he would be at the house before and after school. And he was a big wrestling fan. So he always had his toys over at the house, or he would tape the weekend wrestling events back on VCRs and bring like Saturday night's main event over.
Hmm.
So basically, as I'm developing, able to talk, able to know what's going on, this kid who was a super fan was brainwashing me with wrestling, which was at its peak then. It was the late 80s,
Yeah.
and everyone was watching it. And then when I got to school, in like kindergarten and grade one, wrestling was extremely popular. So you'd go out for recess and everyone would wrestle and so
So
forth.
who was your favorite wrestler at the time back then?
Macho Man was my favorite, and then my parents will tell you that the Undertaker became my favorite, and Ric
Hmm.
Flair was definitely always up there, and of course the Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah.
Many favorites. Billy Graham became a favorite in later years after I got to watch his matches and become friends with him, as we were discussing on my podcast.
Yeah, those were a lot of great names, and I'll tell you, those guys they just had a natural charisma, but then they were very talented as well, and just I don't know how to put my finger on it. Maybe you can better than I, but it just seemed like they were. Yes, of course they were working and they had to build a character and all that kind of stuff, but they were so good at it, and the people were invested in these types of characters and individuals that I don't watch wrestling anymore. I haven't watched wrestling in probably I don't know 20 plus years, but uh, in my opinion, and I wonder if you share the same opinion. These people seem to be so invested in those characters.
Oh, in those days, yeah, and the characters were more a reflection of their real personality than, for instance, I did watch the Royal Rumble last night, the pay per view, the first time in many years, because we're on lockdown here. I was invited to go watch it with a group, so I had nothing better to do. Why not? And the characters just aren't the same from top to bottom of the card, and it doesn't seem like there is much extensions of real life personalities, and they're just some goofy character that one of these 40 plus writers that WWE has now invents for them, where back in the older days there was like one booker.
Yeah.
There wasn't a whole team of writers, and people had to come up with their own ideas. And the wrestlers were more crazy in general because they were on the road a lot more than now. I think they're only on the road 80 days a year. And like you would
Wow.
lose your mind a bit on the road and you would become wild, which is why a lot of them didn't live that long, sadly.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
I
back
think it
then, those
translated.
guys, Devin, weren't they back then on the road probably 250, 300 days a year, or some of those
Yeah,
guys?
yeah, exactly. So that you're away from your family and you're out there living it up on the road, doing the grind, and it can change a person.
Yeah, and it's so sad and tragic when you look at some of those stories. Um, and Devin is right that a lot of those guys died very young. It is so sad because, and some died broke as well. That they were making
Yeah.
great money back then, but the money was just being blown due to the lifestyle. And when you're in that type of lifestyle and locked in on the road like that, I could see how the money would just blow through a person's hands. The first professional wrestler that I ever met was Stan Lane, and I'll never forget it. We were standing at the bar together at Hammerjacks in Baltimore. I worked there for 3 years as a bouncer, and I don't know how it happened. We just happened to be standing next to each other, said hi to each other. And I said, "You look familiar." I said, "Are you Stan Lane?" He said, "Yeah." And we started talking, real nice guy. But he pulled out a wad of cash, and he must have had 5 grand in his hand. Just I'm thinking, man, you shouldn't be pulling that out around here. But he did. And I thought,
Were you
wow,
in
what a
Baltimore?
yes. I thought, man, you shouldn't be pulling that out around here, buddy. I mean, that could mean your life. But real nice guy. And I thought to myself, wow, these guys, they must be making tremendous amounts of money. This guy's got a fistful of money. And just so he was the first wrestler that I met. And then, as we've discussed before, I met a lot of others, whether it be in the gym or in the bars. But who was the first wrestler that you ever met?
The first famous one, I guess, would have been the British Bulldog,
Dynamite or Davey?
Davy Boy.
Okay.
Yeah, because I was out of high school. One thing I'll say on your point about the wrestlers blowing their money, for the ones that didn't die, there's also some like Ricky Morton of the Rock and Roll Express that made so much money over his career in his 60s is still having to wrestle and go out
Sad.
there and do autograph conventions because they didn't save their money well. And that's also sad. But yeah, I was recruited out of high school. Ashley turned down my scholarships to join this kids wrestling TV show that was supposed to air on MTV, and Eric Bischoff from WCW was involved. But the Hart family was also involved, and Harry Smith, now known as Davey Boy Smith Jr., who's a 2-time WWE Tag Team Champion now, he was in it, and his father, who died shortly after this, was hanging around the practices and at the tapings. So I didn't actually interact with them much because I was starstruck and shy.
Yeah.
But like he was the first wrestler that I saw in a natural environment, like goofing around with his kids and stuff, and I was kind of amazed by it.
Tough guy. He was a strong guy, very athletic, could throw drop kicks. Very good athlete, Davey Boy Smith. And like you said, a sad and tragic ending. And it's just so sad
I
that
think he was 38 or 39.
And it's sad that more wrestlers couldn't have been kind of like Bruno in the sense to where Bruno took care of his family, saved his money, had a very nice life, did not live lavishly, but boy, he was very wise with his money and had a good life. It's just sad that more of the guys couldn't have followed that path.
And supposedly the payoff that he got for going into the WWE Hall of Fame after being on the outs with them for years was enough for his grandkids never have to work a day of their life if they don't have to. Yeah, because he had a lot of bad blood with WWE for like 15 or 20 years before they made him have a change of heart.
Yeah. So, I heard that as well, Devin, and I believe it, that I think that family is very well off. And a sad side note on that is I never met Bruno. I was supposed to meet with Bruno, and it never happened. Unfortunately, we were supposed to meet in New York City at the Italian. He was being honored at the Italian festival, and his manager attorney, Martin Lazzaro, he and I became friends, and Marty had arranged that meeting, and unfortunately, I was performing a deliverance for somebody in New York. I was supposed to leave there and meet with Bruno, and it never happened because it took too long for me to do what I had to do helping that person. Big regret. Oh, I wish I could have met him. But interestingly enough, and sad, was that after the induction for Bruno, it wasn't long that Martin Lazzaro was found floating in the river there, the Monongahela River, I think it is, in Pittsburgh. And very sad there because I got to know him, and he was a really good guy. Loved Bruno, and there's nothing that he wouldn't have done for Bruno. But that was also very sad. I was invited to a Christmas party in Pittsburgh at their social club or something, and I couldn't make that either. And oh boy, Devin, that was a regret for me to this day. And then shortly thereafter, Martin Lazar was found dead.
Oh wow! So there was some foul play involved there.
They say it was suicide, but I don't know. Who knows? God only knows that, but it didn't feel right to me. Still doesn't feel right, and just very, very sad. But so after you you brush with Davy Boy, who's the next one that you who was it that really inspired you to want to get into professional wrestling?
Well, I just always wanted to be a wrestler. I just, from, when you're a kid, like playing with toy wrestlers, you
Yeah.
wanted to be a wrestler. You do
Hmm.
backyard matches. And I
Yeah.
guess I just never grew out of it. I just went into amateur wrestling, as you mentioned. My accomplishments, the OFSA championships, are the equivalent of the state championships here in Ontario. I won that twice. Was a Canadian champion. Had scholarship offers, but the only reason I was doing amateur was I was always told it was a good idea to do amateur before pro. And it
Yeah.
is a good idea. I would recommend that still. But I didn't, I took the opportunity to go pro and turned down school, but only now do I realize that NCAA is actually scouted by WWE, and they
Oh, wow.
particularly look for heavyweights. That's where they got Brock Lesnar. So if I had probably just taken my University at Buffalo NCAA Division One scholarship, I probably would have got in through the recruitment of athletes route, but I didn't know that existed at that time. So I wouldn't suggest to anyone to turn down athletic scholarships uh, for any reason. Looking
Yeah.
back at it, that's one of my regrets that I have.
Well, you followed what you were, from a child, what you felt you were led to do. Um, and I had similar aspirations as well, by the way. I mean, I was always a great athlete, and my home life circumstances prevented me from being academically, involved in scholastic sports that were lasting. But I was a great athlete at all the sports that I participated in, and like you, um, as a young child, even throughout my teen and going in, I always wanted to be a wrestler, and so uh, Bruno was my favorite. But then, like we said on your show the last time, Haku Meng, that's somebody else that was one of my favorites, and just people like that, and the Ultimate Warrior as well. You mentioned him, and that guy. I never met him, uh, but I think maybe he was misunderstood, and then maybe in some cases he did have a big ego, and
All
was
wrestlers
off-putting.
have big egos.
Yeah,
Whether they some could hide it better than others.
but I'll say this, and I don't think there's a wrestler out there who followed the career of the Ultimate Warrior that could say otherwise. He had a tremendous look, charisma, and a lot of people came to see him. So you could say what you want about he couldn't wrestle, he couldn't do this or do that, but what he did in that short amount of time, coming from the locker room to the ring, was he had the fans in a frenzy. They bought into him, and man, he was filling up arenas everywhere.
And I was just talking about it with some friends last night that what a way for him to go, because he was also on the outs with WWE, and something happened to make him
Yeah,
okay to come back to the Hall of Fame, just like with Bruno. Who knows what took place?
yeah,
But he gave that speech the night before he died on Raw that was basically a goodbye speech. It was almost like he knew he was going to die,
yeah.
and then he
That is so
died the next
bizarre.
day.
So bizarre. Yeah, I mean, I saw that, and it just even reflecting on it right now kind of gives you the chills because it was almost as if he knew that his time was coming.
Yeah, and it had been like, I don't know, at least 15, 20 years since he had been on national TV. So what are the chances like he's back for 2 days that he dies? How
Yeah,
could you possibly predict that? So it's just
very
very strange.
bizarre. Yeah. Now, I want to bring in my great co host and producer of this show. You haven't met her yet, Desiree Valdez, because she's got a couple questions for you as well. Des, come on in.
Sure. I met her on the chat.
All right. I know
Oh,
you've got some questions for Hannibal, so fire
cool
away.
hair.
Now we can't hear you, Des.
I got it. Here
Oh,
we
there
go.
you go. Okay. All right.
Hey, Devin. Nice to meet
Hello.
you.
Nice cross.
Awesome. Right on. Thanks. Thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah, you're actually going through some of our questions, and I was like, darn it, Bill. That's what I was gonna
Oh,
ask.
sorry.
No, it's totally cool because I was anxious too. Totally nostalgia over here because growing up is exactly kind of that era. My dad's affection of love was the figure four or clothes line, just walking down the hallway, bah, clothesline. There you go. It was like it was always like a headlock, you're gonna do the dishes, headlock here. And so I think one thing that of course is like an obvious, but I already know what the answer is. Is wrestling fake with
Oh,
all the drama? Is it fake?
That is a weird question because some of the matches are more fake than others.
Yeah.
That's all I can say to that. Some are more fake than others.
I always I'm actually I stick up because it seems just like how cheerleading is they think cheerleading is easy or some other sport, but it's actually not. Wrestling is actually hard. It's athleticism,
better
it's
believe it.
stamina. There's a lot of strength, the coordination. You can get hurt. It can be dangerous. So it most definitely is. And yeah, there's flair to
There's
the
stunts
sport.
performed as well. There's stunts performed, and you can also be in there against people that are dangerous.
You
Yes.
just took the words out of my mouth, Devin, because I have been in there. He's a pro. This is his career, but I have. Uh, I was being trained by Gilbert, Dwayne Gill. I had some sessions with him, and I've been in there. I know what it's like. Also, I've had 2 pro matches in Minnesota, and one in that match, I had a collision with this guy who's probably about 330, 340, and we really collided. I had a bruise down here for a week. I mean, we really hit hard together, and
Mm.
so I'm telling you, Des, this is what Devin's saying is right. That if somebody is in there, yes, scripted entertainment, yes, but if someone's in there and they have a bone of contention and they're a shooter, then some bad things can happen. So
Mhm.
Devin could tell you better than I can that their injuries do take place in there.
Oh,
Yeah, if the person doesn't like you, or some people are just bullies, or some people are sloppy. So you got it. That's one of the reasons you need to be trained well to be able to protect yourself as well as protect your opponent, because some people don't protect you in there.
wow.
Yeah,
That's
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 scary stuff. You got to know what you're doing to be in there, and that's why I have such respect for a guy like Devin because he knows what he's doing. He is a shooter. I guess you could call yourself a hooker as well, and a hooker and a shooter, they're kind of the same in that these people can hurt you if they know how to take care of themselves, and if a person crosses lines and boundaries in there, then some bad things can happen.
Yeah, and for what you're explaining there, I know how to amateur wrestle and grapple. As we
Hmm.
talked about, I'm an amateur wrestler. I am also a Canadian Open winner in grappling, Ontario heavyweight and absolute champion in grappling. Not every wrestler actually knows how to really wrestle. So
mm,
it is an advantage, as we were saying earlier, not just from knowing how to do the moves in case you run out of stuff to do in the ring, but in case somebody tries to bully you in the ring. Because if
right.
someone tries to bully you in the ring and you actually know how to wrestle, you can just wrestle them. And I
Wow.
have had to do that. And again, accidents happen. Sometimes unintentional accidents happen with injuries. I've done it to people and I've had it done to me. It's part of the sport. It's rough and it's on the fly. WWE is more choreographed than non WWE matches, but
Is
it's fun. I
what's
love
your
it, but I also love doing YouTube, and I'm just as satisfied doing YouTube and only wrestling here and there these days.
That's awesome. What's your favorite move?
My favorite move is the tilt-a-whirl power bomb or gut wrench power bomb, which I call the sacrifice
Ooh.
power bomb.
Ooh.
And also another move that I do that I really like, but I only have to resort to it sometimes, is
What's
pile
that?
driving somebody from the apron to the outside, through a table, onto the cement floor.
I,
I've
I,
done
I
that a handful of
You got to
times.
know what you're doing to do stuff like that because that's dangerous. Somebody
I
could
Yeah.
did.
die or be
I
paralyzed and
saw
something like
a
that.
video of you doing that. You're going through it was on your channel, and you're going through the uh the ropes, and I
Right.
was like, oh my gosh, how the heck? It was like a Matrix move. I mean, like literally, you just like perfectly just balanced out. Form was awesome. Everything totally hit your target. I was just like, wow, that had to hurt too.
It's also very dangerous, by the way, because this happened to me. By the way, if it's fake, I actually tore my chest in October. It's still recovering from a match. But in that
Oh,
same match, I did a dive to the outside, and the guy did not catch me.
Oh no.
So I went head first into the cement. So like I didn't even remember the next 5 minutes of the match.
That's
I was
concussion
so out
time
of it.
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So like accidents like that can happen too. And on independent shows, more often than not, there's no padding on the outside of the ring, and there wasn't in this case.
And when you think back to the old WWF days, they had those hardwood floors out there at the taping. I think it was Allentown, and
Yeah.
it was those hardwood like basketball court type of floors. And those guys, that was really an art as well. When you think back to like Jimmy Snuka, Ray Stevens, when he pile drived him on that floor and all that, and so they're really, you have to be super super careful when you're doing high risk maneuvers like that.
Even getting thrown out of the ring in bare feet or jumping outside onto the concrete if you don't have boots, because the boots give you ankle support, will hurt. Because I wrestled once in bare feet just to test it out to see if I could jump off the ropes better. And I got thrown outside the ring in that match. And like I got a shooting pain all the way up my foot
Yeah,
through my spine because like you just don't have the thick
there's
sole.
no padding there. Yeah, it's
And
a
I
wonder you
wasn't
didn't get
expecting
shin
it.
splints. It's
Yeah.
a wonder. You could very easily get shit. And that's another thing, Des. He can tell you about that. Is if
oh,
you're not landing properly and your heels are hitting the mat, you will get shin splints and you'll be in tremendous pain. Then you'll be carrying the toothaches around in your calves every day, in the front of your calves.
oh
Yeah,
yeah.
where I was trained, it wasn't actually in a wrestling ring. It was in the Heart Dungeon, which was just mats on a basement floor. So, yes, it hurt more than normal people will experience in training, but you had to learn how to fall properly because there was
Yeah,
no give. A real ring has loose plywood under the
he
mats,
is
and
right.
there's some give to it. But when you're taking falls onto cement, you either have to
Yeah.
learn how to fall correctly or you're going to really hurt yourself. And I never really had any bumping injuries because, and I do think it's because I had to learn to fall so well in my days training in Calgary.
I'll tell you one thing, Devin. I remember the first time that I got into the ring in Minnesota. It was in St. Paul, and I was supposed to come in and interfere in this match. They had me there as a special guest to sign stuff for people and sell books and all that kind of stuff. But they wanted me to be a part of the match. So I go down and I've got to get into the ring. And on my way to getting into the ring, there was something sharp and jagged coming out from like the apron. They had the apron covered, but there was some, and man, it sliced
Mm.
my leg open on down
Yeah.
near my right calf, sliced it wide open before I even got into the ring.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that happened. You can see this thing on my hand. This happened to me from something in a ring, and I don't even know what the hell it was. But I
Wow.
just started doing the match, and all of a sudden, my hand is cut right down to the bone. And like I thought it was the other guy's blood, but about
Mhm.
halfway through the match, I realized, wait a minute, this is my blood. How did it happen? And it must have just been a piece of jagged metal on the ring or
Wow.
something.
And
So
you
yeah,
can't
there is.
stop. Des, when you're in that, especially with the high profile stuff he's been in, you can't just stop and say, oh, I got to cut, stop it. I got to go.
Right.
It doesn't work that way. You got to keep performing until everything is sorted out.
Exactly. And that's what happened that night. And it ended up getting like 60 stitches, and that was over 2 years ago.
Yeah,
Oh
that's
my
a
It's
nasty
still marked
scar.
up.
Wow.
But yeah, that's part of it. You can say it's choreographed or whatever, but
Injury still
There's
happens.
dangers involved for sure.
Well, I could say this firsthand. The first time I got into a ring was with Dwayne Gill, and it was at the Monster Factory, Glen Burnie, Maryland. And there, two guys got in the ring with me, and they wanted me to first started showing me how to bounce off the turnbuckles and do a flip and land on your back. And then they started shooting me into the ropes. And one guy was going to clothesline me, and the other guy got down behind my legs. And man, I did not go with that. And that guy clotheslined me for real. And I went
Mm.
over the other guy. By the time that was over with, I felt like I was run over by a truck, and I was in really good shape. I was a strong guy. But man, I felt like I had been run over by a truck. It's just unbelievable. I'll never forget that. And then the two little matches that I did have in St. Paul there, same thing. I remember coming back on the plane. I had a black eye. I was bruised all the way down my side. So it's things happen for real in there.
Yeah, 100%.
So, all right. Now, what's the worst injury that you ever had, Devin?
Mine have mostly been from wrestling or
Yeah.
from
Yeah,
in
from
general?
the wrestling world.
I guess my worst injury, and we already talked about it, was when the guy cut me with the Hep C infected razor blade and actually infected me with hepatitis C and killed my WWE contract because I actually had a WWE contract offer around the same time, and also killed my health for numerous years because I had to then go through the process of going through 2 treatments to get cured, but I did finally get cured.
Praise God
But
for that.
I would say that was my worst injury, was actually contracting a disease. And I met somebody last night who is an actor that actually had to play me in a reenaction of my case for law students.
Oh, wow.
Because mine was actually the first case in Canada where we proved the disease was transmitted within a sport, because it was proven that through negligence, assault, and battery, this wrestler, Abdullah the Butcher, who's in the WWE Hall of Fame, negligently passed me Hep C because he had it for 10 years. You don't have to be a brain surgeon to know sharing razor blades is dangerous. And he didn't have my permission to cut me. So yes, there's an example of a negligent person that you could find in wrestling, as I was saying earlier about the dangerous wrestlers.
Right.
But yeah, that would have been my the worst injury I had. Luckily, I'll knock on wood, I never broke a bone or anything. I had to have knee surgery once for amateur wrestling, but that's about it. And other than that, it's my torn pec has been my worst injury.
That is a terror. I've never had a full torn pec, but I have had a muscle that tore bicep and the labrum and all that. And man, that takes a long time to heal. So it's amazing that you're able to do what you're doing.
I've had 2 stem cell injections in this one to try and help the recovery, but because of lockdowns here in Canada, I didn't get this happened October 23rd. I didn't get my MRI till like December 9th, and they still haven't given the MRI results to my doctor. I'm supposed to actually see my doctor tomorrow to see what was actually wrong with this. This happened in October, but our healthcare system here is free, but it's slow. So hopefully the stem cells will be enough to get it recovering more. But even the stem cell doctors said, because they had an ultrasound machine there, that the tear is very deep. And the stem cells might not be enough to heal it due to how deep the tear is.
Well, we will pray for you, brother. We'll keep you in prayer. May God completely heal you from that. You're further along than I was, and you probably have a much more severe injury, but I'll tell you, I couldn't even raise my arm for the longest time. I felt like a little kid. I had to start off. At that time, I had a 500-pound bench press, but when that happened, I lost everything. I was like a little kid, had to start all over again. I couldn't even bench 135. It was horrible. It was one of the worst experiences of my life. And it took me years for that to really recover to where I felt like I had confidence that it was strong again. But man, that was devastating.
Yeah, it's never fun. That's all I could say.
Yeah.
Right.
And may it never happen to you again. May God bless you and heal you as quickly as possible with it. Now, Des, I know you got another question for him that we talked about earlier.
Which one? Because I was talking
Yes, I
a
am
lot,
single,
Devin.
to answer your question.
Blaze,
Ask
you
him
know,
about Bruiser Brody.
I oh, Bruce and Brownie. Yeah, man, you did pick some hardcore wrestlers there. I was like, ooh, bruisers. I mean, I remember that as a kid looking. That's going back with like Andre the Giant. Like you guys have mentioned, Ric Flair. Man, I love that.
He was
I love
around
those
in the
days.
Bruno days, in the Bruno heyday, in the
Wow,
70s.
that is. I think that is awesome. What made you pick Bruno?
No,
Like
Bruiser
what
was his
attract?
guy. Bruiser Brody. He liked Bruiser.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's funny actually, Bill. I mentioned this about Bruiser Brody, how weird WWE is. He did feud with Bruno
Yeah.
in WWE when it was WWF.
Yep.
uh-huh.
'Abdullah
75,
the Butcher, the
76.
guy that screwed me over, was never in WWE,
Never
never
once.
wrestled Bruno or anything like that.
Really?
But Bruiser Brody, they didn't put him in the real Hall of Fame. They put him in this legacy wing that the WWE has. But Abdullah, who never even wrestled for WWE, is in the official one and not the legacy wing. But Brody, one of the all-time
Right.
greats, somehow doesn't qualify, and they didn't even invite his wife to the
It's
Hall of
horrible.
Fame that weekend, and she
Mm,
was in New York City that weekend. I was
that's
seeing
not
her.
cool.
That's how I know this. They didn't even ask her if they could put him in the legacy wing. They just
Yeah,
did
Wow.
it.
it's mind-boggling. It really is. And
Politics.
Bruiser Brody was one of the. He was an original. Now, the closest thing to Brody at the time that might have been a little before his time was Pompero Firpo, but he was a smaller guy. He was a strong guy, but he was not big like Bruiser Brody. Bruiser Brody was a scary individual. He was somebody that, again, was real and authentic, and somebody that he was feared, and not only feared by the people, but feared by a lot of the wrestlers as well. I mean, you could talk a little more about him, Devin. You certainly know about him. You know his wife.
Yeah, well, one thing I'll mention about Pampiro Firpo is supposedly that's the guy that Macho Man got the ooh yeah from.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah,
Wow.
he took
Okay,
it
that
from
makes
him
Oh,
sense.
because he was
Yeah.
doing the voice, right? Pampiro. He
Yeah.
was before my time, but he had the whole Macho Man voice.
Yeah. He
That's
was
where
real
Macho
big
Man.
with
oh.
the Chic there in the
Uh,
Midwest Detroit areas and all that. Furpo was a big star there in
man,
the
the Sheik.
Midwestern.
Yeah,
Yeah, the Chic.
the Sheik
But
is one of my favorites. The original
I
Sheik.
I remember when he first came out. Man, I mean, like to be creative, to create the persona itself, takes creativity and thought process, and then the fulfillment. To follow through. Sometimes, like I wouldn't be able to even distinguish Macho Man. I mean, I believe he was Macho Man like 24/7. That was like
Yes.
Macho Man. So it was kind of like almost like he was just himself. And then you had was it Snake Eyes Jake the
Jake the
Snake?
Snake. Oh
Yeah, Jake
Yeah,
the
yeah.
big
Snake.
mistake.
There was
He's
like
really
just
like that too.
right, you're right. There were some people that were just like so just it was just who they were. So it was effortless.
Ric
But then
Flair is like that too,
Oh
supposedly.
I kind of figured he was. He kind of looked like he was. I
Yeah.
didn't. I've never met any professional except for you two right now.
Yes, because Bill qualifies officially. He's had a match.
no,
I love that.
no. But I've been there. I can say that, but no, not on
You
your
wrestle
level.
with
Not really.
demons.
You better believe it. That's what I am now, the spiritual warrior. But back then I had a lot of connections. I can't explain it. I just had so many encounters with pro wrestlers. I guess maybe because I had such a desire to become a professional wrestler, I wasn't following after anybody, but we always seemed to be together somehow, some way, some place. And I have met a lot of the guys over the years, and just incredible. Now, I never met Bruiser Brody or Stan Hansen, but those guys, Des back then, they were a rare breed in the sense that they were wild men and they were capable of anything. They were unpredictable. I don't even think they knew what they were going to do.
Yeah.
But what that did was brought the fans in to say, wow, what's this
hmm
guy going to do? And they would sell out arenas everywhere because of that type of persona.
And one thing about Brody is when I met his wife, a lot of people ask me, is there anybody you were starstruck by of all the interviews you did? And strangely enough, when I met his wife, because of how much research I've done on him and so forth, I actually like started crying because
Oh,
like of the murder that happened to him. And it's like meeting his
Yeah.
wife made it real. And like I actually like cried a little bit when I met her. I was so like not only in awe to like meet Bruiser Brody's actual wife, but like I felt her loss
mm,
Sad. Very, very
because
sad.
as she probably doesn't know, he was murdered actually in the
Yeah.
dressing room and bled to death for 45 minutes on the floor because
my
of a
God.
conspiracy that they had, according to reports, because the office owed him money and stuff. And there were
No.
some people that didn't like him. So unfortunately, he was murdered, and it was one of the biggest tragedies in the history of wrestling.
What was that, 1988, Devin?
July of 1988.
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't have got away with it today with the internet, but because it
Yeah.
was Puerto Rico in 1988 and news traveled slow, the murderer left, disposed of the weapon, and wrestled later on that card, and
Can you
never
imagine
lost
that,
his
Dev?
job. Kept wrestling with the company. Jose
No.
What
Gonzalez
he's saying
appeared.
is absolutely the truth. That's what
Oh,
happened. Can you imagine that?
I can actually. I mean, I do. I totally believe that, especially when you guys I forget who it is you spoke with, and you're like, oh, that was a freaky accident. And I felt Hulk Hogan as well's death was. Yeah, I do believe that that really goes on. And just the way it is exposed or spoken about is kind of like the narrative of the media, and
But
whether it
like he
benefits
says, it
other
wouldn't
people or not.
happen today. There's no way that it could happen today
No,
because, and even if that had happened in the United States, well, then that individual would have been taken into custody. But Puerto Rico is a whole different area
yeah,
there. It's a very dangerous place to be.
there's corruption.
Right, right.
And Devin
Uh,
could tell you that firsthand because he's wrestled there and he's won titles there. It's a very, very dangerous
Yeah,
place.
very dangerous, and that company was well connected. But also, there's a lot of murders there because it's a drug trade hub. Because they get a lot of drugs into the U.S. through Puerto Rico, since it's technically part of the U.S.
uh-huh.
So I had a friend that's a cop that said that like 19 murders in a weekend for a 3 million person island isn't uncommon there. So
Oh,
like
wow.
death isn't that big of a deal there. But again, as Bill and I are saying today with the internet, the uproar would have been so huge
Oh,
that they
yeah.
wouldn't have been able to just gloss over it. I
No,
don't even
we
think the
covered that up.
deliberation was that long. I think that the deliberation when they deliberated on it, it was like only an hour or two for the
Wow.
verdict.
And wrestlers that were supposed to be witnesses who were there that night and saw what happened, they
Mhm.
got their subpoenas after the trial was over, some of them. So
Yeah,
they wanted to make sure that that was going to be a very quick thing and in the favor of the perpetrator, which that's what happened.
and his wife never sued the comp. His wife is almost too nice.
Mm.
Yeah, God
His
bless her.
wife like didn't fight for justice. That's the other thing that's unfortunate about it. But I guess he was always careful with his money, so he probably just instilled that in her. Don't waste money on
Yeah,
lawsuits. Hell, on that Abdullah lawsuit, I've spent like 130 grand and not collected a penny. So
that's
maybe she did the
Wow.
right thing by just letting it go.
She may have, Devin, because I think that, again, I never met Bruiser Brody, so I don't know firsthand, but I have read that he was. I read his book. I've got his book, Brody.
Yeah.
I've read it. And he was, according to that, frugal with his money and cared very much about his family, put his family first, and he saved. So I'm sure that there were some, I hope, significant savings there from his career for his wife
Yeah.
and child.
And sadly, last I heard about his son was in prison for some
Really?
drug related charge. So it's
Oh
unfortunate that
man, that's sad.
his son is actually ended up going to prison, and the murderer never spent any time in prison.
Wow.
Very, very sad.
Yeah.
Boy, oh boy, if
Wow.
I could ever be a help to that guy, I certainly would. What would you say? He's probably in his 30s now, the son?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody said I should organize a GoFundMe for him to get a good lawyer, but I didn't know if I wanted to bring too much attention to that.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, uh, without the circumstance, knowing all the circumstances behind
Yeah,
it.
there's
That's
not a lot of
terrific as well.
details other than the mug shots, and because he's not famous or anything, there's just like the basic details on why he's in prison and what's he's in prison for.
And a lot of that, again, I don't know him, can't pretend to guess why, but based on some of my cases over the years, perhaps, and even in my own life, there's a lot of anger and bitterness when you have some really bad circumstances. Neither of my parents lived to see the age of 50. My father was murdered, he was shot to death. When you have that type of thing happen, there is the manifestation of rage and anger, and perhaps maybe he's carrying some of that around with him that is contributing to some reckless types of behavior. I don't pretend to know the answer, but I could just guesstimate, I guess, based on my own experiences and experiences of some of my clients from over the years.
Looking it up now, it says he was arrested 3 times on drug-related charges. His most recent arrest took place in 2019. It was possession of drugs in the
Yeah.
state of Texas. He's going to be released in 2022 from that sentence.
Oh wow.
So he'll be
Well,
released this year.
we pray for him, and if somebody knows him that might be watching this, let him know that if he really wants help and if he wants to make changes in his life, I would certainly be there and offer my services to help him to make those changes. And if the greatest decision that he could ever make in his life is to make God first in his life, and then things could change. But we could say all day long, and there's plenty of workers out there in this type of business as well, that they'll talk the talk, but they are not walking the walk. And when it comes down to doing the real thing and trying to really reach out and help people, they could care less. But I
Right.
am committed to helping others, and I take the sufferings of others very personally. So I know what it's like to suffer. And if anybody's out there connected to this young man, if he wanted help, I certainly would offer help to him.
That reminds me, speaking of that topic, what do you think about Ted DiBiase's whole thing with accepting welfare money through his ministries? And he ended up having to pay like 700 grand back of misallocated funds that were supposed to go to the poor.
I think it's sad. And it's, look, am I perfect? No. Do I pretend to be perfect? No. I could write a 500-page book on the mistakes that I've made in life, but I am authentic and I try to do the best that I can do and be the best I can be each and every day of my life. What I do is real. I love people. Will do anything to help anybody. I haven't stolen from anybody. I don't have a money lust. I do charge for my services, but I help people for free as well. I've probably helped more people for free than I have ever charged them. But
And you
in
got to
that
make a
case,
living somehow.
that's how I make my living. That's how I make my living. So God has blessed me to put me in this position to be able to make a living. I am not rich. I'm rich in spirit, but I'm not
Not
monetarily
unless you
wealthy.
sell those guitars.
Well, I praise God for them too. But I'm not trying to pick the pockets of people. And I don't know Ted DiBiase. I've never met him. I do. Here's a funny story. I think I told you about this before, Devin. There is a link to Ted DiBiase through his, I guess it's his former publicist now or whatever. He and I were friends. I haven't heard from him in a while, but he was going to do some work for me years ago. And he tried to connect me with Ted DiBiase. And I'm glad that it didn't work out, because if Ted DiBiase is doing these kinds of things, that's very sad and unfortunate. And I pray that he'll be convicted in his spirit not to do these things again. Look, we all have to have money to live. I understand that. However, when it comes down to things like that, you have to step back and say, what am I really doing here? And how am I benefiting from this? Because you can't hide these shadow deeds from God. So he will always, when something is wrong in that way, God will expose it. Then there's going to be circumstances following that. So I do pray for Ted DiBiase that if he has done these things, and I think, David, that he's connected with Brett Favre in this thing as well. And Brett Favre
Yeah, and his
got like
son as well.
millions.
It was a whole family deal.
Wow. Well, I pray for them all, and I pray that they rectify the situation. Did he pay all the money back?
Brett Farbs did. I don't know if I don't know if
Oh,
Ted DiBiase did yet, but Ted DiBiase only owes 700,000. The Suns owe much, much more. And I don't know if the
Wow.
Suns have access to that money. I know WWE just gave Ted DiBiase a job for a while, probably to help him. And he sold his house. He had a mansion worth about 2 million, I believe, that he sold a couple years ago. So Ted could probably pay that 700 grand back, but the Suns was, I'd have to look it up, but the Suns owed a lot more than that, so they may have to go to jail.
And,
mm,
this all comes down for the love of money. So it's not money because God blesses and has favor on a hardworking man, and he will increase that man in every way. However, when a man is doing nefarious things, especially when it comes to money, for the love of money is the root of all evil. So there you go. So people do terrible things for money, and then money becomes their God, and they are solely focused on that. I could sit here for the next couple of hours and name preacher after preacher who their main focus is money. And you got guys that say those who do not tithe, which, boy, I could blow them out of the water with this. If I went into their churches, they'd be calling the police on me. But they say for those who do not tithe should be lined up against a wall and shot. Are you kidding me? You're supposed to be a Christian pastor, and you're saying that if you don't give me money, you should be lined up the wall against the wall and shot. Well, the ties are between Yahweh, our glorious God, and the Levite priest. That's where the tithing comes in. Glad heart, wonderful. That's a great. But I've had so many people come to me over the years. You know what? My pastor, because I didn't have money to give, and election plate came to me. That was like they put a big spotlight on me and looked at me like I was some kind of outsider that wouldn't contribute. I didn't have money to contribute. And they shame that person back to that church. And that is a crime before God. So they have made money their God. And these people are greedy dogs that can never get enough. And they're going to choke in their own vomit. And I don't wish that on anybody. But people that are doing these things better take a step back and realize what they're doing, because they are mocking God by using him to get monies out of others.
Terrible.
So it is terrible. And it's very sad, but this goes across the board of so many people leaving the churches. And I hate to say this, it really pains me to say it, but I would have to say that a large number of today's churches, not just in America, but around the world, have been corrupted, and corrupted due to money. And it's just very, very sad and unfortunate. And I'm thankful that there are some people out there that are still real, that can be a help to people and to help people to move forward. That's what this show's all about now, Devin, is to try and spiritually feed people and help them to move forward, because everybody's struggling in some way. I'm struggling myself right now. Just the death of my dear friend, Mr. Hart, before coming on the show here. And by the way, Mr. Delbert Hart was an avid wrestling fan. So I find it very interesting that we're having this show now on this day, this night, because he loved professional wrestling. Pedro Morales was his favorite wrestler. And
no.
Mr. Hart was a very quiet man. He was a strong guy, a hard worker, always provided for his family. They took in so many people, including me. Just amazing the amount of people that they took into that house over the years to help. But Mr. Hart was a very gentle and quiet guy. But if you interrupted him during his time of watching wrestling, look out. His fury would come upon you. So it's good that we're having this show now, and it brings back some really fond memories of a great man that I consider to be family to me.
Mm. Yeah,
Nice.
I'm really sorry about that, though.
So, yep. So the timing is perfect. We praise God. And we know that Mr. Hart will just continue to pray for Mrs. Hart and the family. Mr. Hart had 3 sons and a daughter, Gerald, Delbert, and John, and daughter Sharon. They are like siblings to me. Love them all dearly, and we'll continue to pray for them.
Most definitely will. Yes.
So, Devin, tell us about now. You got so much going on now, and everything's just exploding for you.
Well, I'm really just focusing on my The Hannibal TV YouTube channel, and we're
Right.
also building. We're getting almost as many hits or more hits on some videos now on our The Hannibal TV Facebook page, and yeah, I got Great North Wrestling matches coming up August or April the 23rd in Ottawa. Tickets are on sale now at ticketweb.ca. More information at thehannibaltv.com, and then Petawawa, Ontario, September 3rd. So just working on lots of projects. There might be a movie being made about my Blood Hunter character as early as this summer. So I'm also working on putting that together. A synopsis has already been written about it.
Nice.
Wow.
So now we just got to fine tune the synopsis, and they're going to actually write the script, and it's going to be a horror movie based on
Well,
my Blood Hunter character. So not really to go along with this podcast very well, but it's going to be cool.
is Kevin Sullivan involved in this, or what's you
No,
asked me the question on your show what I thought about his gimmick? Is it the real deal?
well, Kevin does manage the Blood Hunter from time to time. My character, which I've been wrestling as now since August 2019. Is Kevin Sullivan satanic for real? No, I don't think he is. No,
Yeah,
to answer your
he said
question.
in an interview he was a choir boy. He was an altar boy there and back in Boston.
Does he have a bad side to him, like an evil side to him, like I do as well? Yes, but he's not satanic.
And everybody has a propensity and has it within them to do good and they evil as well. It comes down to choice, and it
Yeah.
also comes down to emotion. So the mind, body, and spirit works together. And I've learned this from my own mistakes over the years. I used to be a very impulsive individual and could be one way one second, then totally a different way the next minute. But I've learned now to give rational thought before going into action and doing things, rash things. Um, so maybe that comes with age. I don't know. I'm an old guy now, so maybe that comes with age. But
Yeah.
back in those days when I was your age, Devin, and younger, oh boy, the impulse was. It's a miracle I'm still here. I really should have been shot to death or in prison. I mean, I've done so many things that I could have very easily either one. But
Oh, that's one reason why I never doubt God. When I was young, I would doubt that there was a God. But because of the amount of times I could have passed away, and I haven't, including an incident a couple weeks ago, I can only thank God
Mm.
for
yeah,
keeping me
and
alive.
he's there for you. He's with you and for you. And I'm so glad that you had a visitation and a dream that your grandmother finally came to you in that dream. And we praise God for that. She gave you confirmation that she's okay.
Aw,
And she looks forward to seeing you again in God's heavenly kingdom.
Yes, and
hallelujah.
as I said, I made a mistake. I did not write down that dream. But as your co-host probably doesn't know this, but my grandmother passed away a little over a year ago, and I was very close to her. She appeared in orbs in the funeral photos around me, green orbs. Her last name was Greenwell, but I tried numerous times to go to the graveyard at weird times and just looking for some sort of confirmation, and I got nothing. But
Mhm.
early January, she appeared to me in a dream,
Wow.
and
Praise
I
God.
do remember that part. But as I said, it was one of these dreams where you wake up from, you
Mhm.
think about what just happened, but you figure you're going to remember it in the morning. And I
Right.
wish I had actually written down what the interaction was, but I still have the vivid image of seeing her in the dream, and I felt
And
very comforted that I had seen her.
And I think that's wonderful. And you'll see her again. She'll be coming to you in other dreams. There's no doubt about it. I don't pretend to think like God or know what God is going to do. However, I firmly believe, again, based on my own personal experiences, that God does allow our loved ones from time to time to come and check in on us. And it's usually through some type of dream or something of that nature. So I do believe, Devin, that you'll be having another visitation from her through a dream soon.
And
And
you're
for what I
lucky
was
that.
just saying about being evil, I saved that for the ring for your fans out there that might not understand what I was talking about. There's a side that you could keep in the wrestling ring, which is why the wrestling business can be a fun outlet to unleash that side, where
Mm.
Yeah,
hopefully you're not going to get arrested for what you do. And you can go back to real
exactly
life and
right.
be normal again.
Yeah, exactly right. And there's a fine line in that to where, again, if you were a blockhead like me that really lived on impulse, and that's why I hate that saying, follow your heart. If you follow your heart, you're going to follow your heart to disaster. You have to follow your mind and have sound, rational thinking. It took me many years, and I praise God for helping me to come to that realization. Back then, if I got mad at somebody and if somebody did me wrong, I'd kick their door in and pull them out. I busted a car window out, pulled somebody out through one time. I'm not proud of these things,
Yeah.
but that's how I was. Impulsive, being impulsive. And I thank God I'm not that way anymore. But I understand what it's like to be in that type of environment and live that way, as opposed to now having the sound and rational thinking. So I pray that for everybody.
Yeah,
Right.
I never had those impulses as a bouncer if someone did something to me, but violence against women always really
Oh,
set
yeah,
me off
Triggered.
and like made me completely lose it. So
yeah.
there's a few of those times where I'm lucky nothing bad came out of it for me.
Oh, we could make a whole show out of some of those experiences, Devin. That's
What
for
what
sure.
I had a question, Evan. What inspired for Hannibal? Your character names or your names. What
What
inspired
about it?
that? Your names. Uh, Hannibal. Like, where did that come from, or how did
I
that
was
become?
given that name by a wrestler called Bushwhacker Luke, who was in the WWE Hall of Fame.
Oh,
And basically,
Bushwhacker.
you don't usually get to pick your names a lot of the time, which a lot of people don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But when I started in Stampede Wrestling, they gave me a name I didn't like. Like my last name is Nicholson.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, I guess they thought it was Nichols. And since I started when I was 17, they called me like Kid Nichols, which I always had like a big person's body. So I hated that name. And I remember when I sent my tapes to Puerto Rico because the business was really good in Puerto Rico at that time. And I wanted to go wrestle there. They had TV shows and it was really popular. There was big crowds and everything. They called me and they said, "We like your tapes, but we really don't like your name, and that name's not going to get over here." They said, "We want to call you Hannibal because when you have that evil look on your face,
Uh-huh.
you remind us of Anthony Hopkins from Silence of the Lambs. So you're going to be Hannibal." And then I went to Puerto Rico, and as Bill said, I was a former IWA Puerto Rico Intercontinental Champion, two-time WWC Puerto Rico Tag Team Champion. And you could still say, other than Texas recently, Puerto Rico is the most popular ever was. So Hannibal really stuck. But since then, I've actually become a fan of the Carpathian Conqueror, Hannibal.
Oh, Carpathian
So I
Conqueror.
actually like Hannibal the Conqueror too. So you can take it because I'm conquering YouTube and
Awesome.
destroying all my competition, or you can take it that I actually do like the taste of blood. So it's actually a little weird that they named me that before I even knew it.
Uh-huh.
But I
And
do
here he's
have the Hannibal Lecter side to me as well.
and
I
here he's got
see.
these huge numbers, and it's amazing. It really is. We have a little show here. We have little numbers, and I'm thankful for the people that we do have. I praise God for
Well,
that because
we
I
are
think
going to
it's
share
great
this
numbers.
clip on there as well, so you'll get probably at least double or triple the views on this one. And
Fantastic,
hopefully
and
some of
praise
those will
God
carry
for it.
over.
Yeah, I want to plant good seeds with people, and I want people to know that this is a place that they could come to, and have either a great interview like this. We start the show off obviously planting good seeds with people. Music, so we're bringing God into this from the beginning. After this interview is over, Des will play a couple songs, and then we'll go to the prayer list that is just gigantic. So we want people to be fed in many ways, mentally, spiritually, and physically. So an interview like this is very different. You're the most different person that we've had since we started this version of the
Yeah.
show, as far as your background and what you're doing. We have Pastor Craig Brown on with us from time to time, and Captain Christopher Brost. So we have varying guests, but it's all fascinating to me because I want to know people's story and where they come from and what they're doing and where they're going. And so this all works together. And I hope that all of you out there who've been watching this have really found this to be very interesting, this interview with Devin, and then everything combined in it. So I pray every week, as a matter of fact, I pray every day that God will work through me to be a blessing to somebody. And I hope that's exactly what's happening here now.
Very good.
Now, my brother, do you have anything further to say? Anything else that you want to say before we wrap this up?
No, just that you can follow us on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter at The Hannibal TV. And I'd appreciate if you would subscribe if you like wrestling or MMA content, matches and interviews and news. We got a lot of it. And we also have some UFO and paranormal videos as well. Some of my biggest hit videos are UFO related, but it's hard to find. There's a lot of off the wall people in that industry, and I like to try and keep it with the more credible ones. So I don't go too crazy in that domain just yet, but we do a little bit of everything. So as it says right on the screen, at the Hannibal TV.
The next time you come back on here, I want to dig.
Sure.
We didn't even get a chance to go there. The next time you come back, we'll dig into that area, your UFO paranormal studies, and that'll be fascinating as well.
Des, yes, and I'm still waiting for that ride along with you for the time that I get to exercise a place with you.
Yeah, once we get this COVID junk out of here and under control again, then I'll start traveling again. I do have a lot of clients in New York, and I'm hoping that this junk will be under control by the time spring comes, because I am going back up there in the spring to help people. I'll let you know when I'm up there, and then you could get together. We'll get together and come along, and then we'll let God be God after that.
Our lockdown ends here tomorrow. We've been locked down for the month of January. So I'm looking forward to the freedom again.
Yeah, it's just a very interesting time that we're living in. And again, we could make a whole show about what my thoughts on all this is, but we'll refrain from it. But I hope that.
Did you hear about the convoy this weekend right here in my town? They had 150,000 trucks.
Absolutely.
2.3 million people protest vaccination mandates here in Ottawa. I don't like traffic, so I kept my distance, but I did report on it just because a lot of the news is avoiding reporting on that particular protest.
There is a movement taking place, and look, whether you took it or not, that's your business. It's not mine. However, there are people that are resisting this and saying, no, you're not going to do this. And there's people in America, in Canada, in many other countries as well, saying, no, we're not. So this is very interesting. People standing up saying, no, you're not going to do this. We're not going to comply with this. And I pray that God will keep it peaceful. But if something doesn't give or change some way, here in America, it was ruled unconstitutional that the businesses can no longer force people to get it. So something is starting to shift a little bit. However, I just wonder, and I hate to be pessimistic, I pray that I'm wrong, but it makes me wonder what the next thing is that they're setting the people up for that will sort of shift from this to the next thing. I hope I'm wrong. I don't want to be right.
Some will say a false alien invasion.
You could be very right about that as well. And that's another show. When we have you back, man, we're going to talk further into that because there are so many things pertaining to that. So many people having sightings all over the world. And there is a connection. And the connection, because so many more people are seeing UFOs, but so many people are also seeing Bigfoot creatures. They are seeing non-human looking beings. These things are here and they are getting into place for what I believe, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, is the ultimate showdown between good and evil. So I firmly believe that in our lifetime, and I think very soon, we're going to see a great and terrible day come. And it will be the day that Yahweh has had enough, and then swift destruction is going to come. Do I wish that on anybody? No. But I, as a student of the Bible, have seen in many instances where civilization gets out of control like this, and God does everything that he can to tolerate it because he loves us so much, but then he can't tolerate it anymore, and then destruction comes. So are we headed for something like that again? We very well may be. I firmly believe it, and I think that's why all of these different types of phenomena are getting into place for this great and terrible day. So we will see. Time will tell. But I believe it's going to happen sooner than later.
Well, I'm ready for it. If I'm going to go, I want to go in a blaze of glory with all this stuff going on.
It will be a blaze of glory for sure. And according to the scriptures, if the scriptures are true, in less than 1 hour, complete destruction. It will happen in America first, then the other nations. But in less than 1 hour, America will be destroyed. Do I wish it? No. Do I want to see loss of life? No. This is why I'm doing what I do in trying to lead as many people to God as I possibly can before this comes down. So,
well, I'm with doing nuclear weapons, it could happen in less than that.
Yeah, well, but we're talking something outside of that, though, Devin. We're talking something that if Yahweh sends, which I believe will be UFOs, which are Merkabah, the heavenly chariots, they are called Merkabah, and they come out of heaven. And then when Satan and a third of the angels came down, they came down in these chariots called Vimana. And now the governments of the earth have this technology, which they've made deals with the devil, literally. And then there are, in my opinion, other life forms that Yahweh created in the vastness of the universe. So you have four different facets of this whole thing and how it interlocks together. But make no mistake, I truly believe 100% that God's not going to put up with this for much longer. We have so many headlines, and I told Des, let's not do the headlines today because I wanted to talk with you more. But every week we read these headlines, and man, I could make a whole show out of just reading the headlines. It's just horrific, some of these things that are happening all over the world, and mind-boggling, the behavior of some people, and just letting some people do these things without really any type of recourse or incarceration or anything like that. Like the LA train, they're robbing the trains in Los Angeles and taking all the products and then leaving all the trash everywhere on the tracks and everything. Nobody's doing anything about it. Well, guess what? It's going to continue because they can. They know they can get away with it. They're going to continue to do it.
Well, pray for the best.
That's all we can do, brother. Yeah. And we certainly thank you for being with us. It's been a pleasure. Always great having you on. We look forward to you coming back with us again. And God bless you and in all of your ways and all of your endeavors. And we'll be talking soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your great work that you're doing.
Thank you, my brother. God bless. We'll talk soon.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please help me out and like this video, then click the subscribe and get notifications buttons so you don't miss any of my latest shoot interviews, match videos, or news updates. Follow us on Facebook at The Hannibal TV for more live streams and videos. And while you're at it, follow us on Instagram and Twitter at The Hannibal TV.